Hello there, ladies, gentlemen, and unicorns. I'm Phil, and this is just a quick one-off tutorial to tell you how you can make your own maps that run in the original Doom or any other source port thereafter. So, let's get started. So, you need a couple of tools for it. The first one would be Doom. A Doom version that runs on current systems would be Chocolate Doom. A link to everything is in the description. You can download it here for your system. In my case, it's Windows. And once you have it, just unzip it anywhere where you can easily find it. In my case, just call this Chocolate Doom on my desktop. Extract everything, and you're almost good to go. To be able to run Doom, first you need the Doom WAD file. The WAD file is the file with all the assets for the game. WAD stands for where is all the data, so essentially it's some sort of an archive format where you can find everything in one file. For this tutorial, I'll be working with the Doom 2 WAD file that you can get at the Internet Archive. Link is in the description, but if you want to make your level for Doom 1, you need the Doom.wad file without any numeral. So here on archive.org we can find it and just say show all, and there it is, doom2.wad, 14 megabytes, that's the right one. So on my desktop I have now Doom and Doom.wad. Like I said, for this tutorial we just need Doom.wad. I just move it here to Chocolate Doom, and now we can set up Chocolate Doom by running chocolatedoom.setup. I like it because the setup menu looks like a good old DOS game configuration screen. So what you can configure here is not a lot, because Chocolate Doom strives to recreate the original classic Doom experience. So it's not vanilla Doom, it's Chocolate Doom. So to configure the display, I'm not going with full screen, but for the sake of this tutorial I will go with this one here. I keep the original aspect ratio, we don't need the ending screen, and we want to save the screenshots in PNG. Again, you can configure this however you want. And with that, we just save our parameters and launch Doom. And there it is, it starts in seconds, and here we are, we can already play it. One thing that you notice is the screen size. Currently it's slightly smaller. You can change it here in the options with the screen size smaller or bigger, depending on your preferences. I like to have here my health and ammo bar on the lower corner. So it works. This is part one. The next that we need is, of course, a level editor or a map editor. So the next thing that you want is the ultimate Doom builder. And again, in my case, I download the latest version. So I get the archived version that is just a zip file that we can unzip like with Chocolate Doom before, and everything is in just this one folder. So that's the ultimate Doom builder. I'll just make here a new folder, UDB, extract everything there, and we're good to go. One last editor that we need in case you want to add your custom textures for floors or walls would be SLADE. The current version is SLADE 3, and again I'm just taking the 64-bit binaries without an installer. So here in the SLADE zip there are really just 3 files. Again, I will just extract it here on the desktop. And with that we are set and ready and can start making our first Doom map. So first, I start up the ultimate Doom builder by running builder.exe. So to configure this editor, first we need to go to Tools and Game Configurations. So our Doom and Doom 2 levels here with this configuration will run on the original DOS game. If you want to support newer Doom source ports that also have additional features, such as ZDoom or even GZDoom, of course you can also work with this one here, with this editor, but for us it's the very plain vanilla, or in our case chocolate version of Doom. So let's select here Doom 2, and the first thing here under resources is we need to add a resource. This is the Doom 2 WAD file that we downloaded. That should also be in the Chocolate Dooms folder. From my Chocolate Doom folder where we have Doom 2, and I hit OK, and you know what, I do the same thing for Doom 1 in case we need it. So back to Doom 2. What's the next thing that we can look at? The node builder is the compiler for the 3D geometry. Essentially, when you want to do some testing, then node fast without rejects should be fine, but you will notice some slowdowns when there is a lot going on. On nowadays machines, I think even running Zen mode for saving maps and even for testing, having the normal version should be fine unless your map gets very complex and complicated. Then here on testing, you can already see here the engine Chocolate Doom is selected because I used this before. In your case, it would read unnamed engine, so you just hit the plus. And there you can select your Chocolate Doom. So in our case, we just select chocolatedoom.exe, and that's all. It recognizes which engine it is, and we can even set which skill level we want to test our game on. Usually when I'm doing testing, I'm using I'm Too Young to Die. Right here for textures are pre-configured texture sets. I'm not going to mess with these ones. And here as for modes, there are different additional editing modes that can be used with Doom Builder. But for now, let's just keep it as it is. So to recap, Doom 2 resources, have your Doom 2 WAD, and for testing, make sure you have your Chocolate Doom engine selected, and that's all you need in terms of configuration. To start creating our first map, you guessed it, you select File, New Map, or just hit this icon, and another dialog pops up for the map options. Be sure that for our case, we will be working with the configuration that we just set for Doom 2, and once this is set, you can pretty much leave everything else alone. There in the resources, the Doom 2 WAD should be loaded, and pretty much that is it. If you hit OK, we are here in this editor view. One thing that is important to understand is there are different modes in which you edit different parts of a level. So it starts as out here in the vertices mode. You can switch to line depths, which is a vertex is a point. A line is the line between those 2 points, and a sector is a closed shape that is made up of lines. This will get clear in a moment. So you can select them either here via mode or here on the sidebar, or just use the keyboard shortcuts. So this is what usually I'm going to do. So V for vertices, L for lines, S for sectors, and T for things. We will get to these in time. So just make sure that we start here on the vertices mode. And let's draw the first room of our level. In the vertices mode, I just right click, and suddenly when I move my mouse, I'm creating my first line. The cool thing is that it really shows you how long the line is. And if I left click and not right click, so right click for to insert the first vertex, and then left click for every additional vertex, let us create here this nice little very symmetrical room. The cool thing is with these units, it's easy to stay symmetrical. And notice what happens when I close up this shape here. Bam, suddenly it has here the floor texture applied. So if I switch now between the different modes, so right now we're still here in the vertex mode. When I left click on a vertex and I want to move it, it doesn't work. You have to hover over it and hold right click, and then you can move the vertex around. This is something that you need to get used to. But yeah, with left click, I draw a selection in this case, and right click and drag, I can move it around. Just so you know, when I'm doing these kinds of things, it's just what you can do with the mouse. When I switch over with L, it says here down below line depths mode. And because I have selected these vertices, suddenly the lines are selected. Again, I can cover here multiple lines or just a single line, or just when I hover over it with the mouse, I can select lines. If I just left click, you can see here, I can select multiple lines, and when I right click, I move those lines as well. So the next thing you want to know, of course, is how to clear one of these selections, and the shortcut is C to clear a selection. So usually when you move just one line, so you hover over it and right click and drag this line, but if you select multiple lines, C to clear the selection, or you can just click them individually and C to clear the selection. The same thing is true when you're in the vertices mode. I can click multiple vertices and then right click and drag them, works just the same, C to clear the selection. And when we have multiple sectors, which we don't at this point, it works the same. Left click to select, right click and drag to move, and C to clear the selection. Doom doesn't render really 3D, but instead you draw everything here on a 2D grid and just can select different heights for certain passages. But this is enough to make levels that really feel three-dimensional. What you cannot do is have multiple floors, for example, of a house on top of each other. So if we were to make a staircase that starts here on the left and then wraps around and that we have a sector on top of this one, this is not possible with Doom. You might have seen it in some WODs or user levels, but this is only done through clever teleporting of the player. For example, if I had here a staircase, I would teleport the player once they reach the center of the staircase to a different point of the map that just has the upper floor modeled. And when they walk back, they get invisibly teleported back to this part. So this is in principle how this works. So for us, it means we can draw everything there on a 2D grid. So let's make this a bit more interesting by introducing new sectors. So for this, again, I hit V for the vertices mode and create here maybe some sort of lava pool or something. And at the end here of this entrance, I want to have a door, but we will get to this. So for now, just let's start our player. Again, right click and then left click and start our player somewhere here. So you probably wonder now, this is awfully confusing if you want to edit a level despite not being actual 3D, but still that looks 3D. How can you edit this in this 2D view? Because it's probably a bit cumbersome. This is where the visual mode comes into play. You can find it here under mode and visual mode, or use Q on your keyboard. You will use the Q quite often, so get used to using Q on the keyboard, or you can again just select it here from the toolbar to the side. So when I do this and move my mouse around, suddenly we are here in this 3D rendition of our level. I can move and fly around this level here. And for this, I do not use vast, but the letters shifted one next. So E is forward, D is backward, S is strafe to the left, and F is strafe to the right. And this is how usually I edit my levels, because it's just the fastest way to move around. So by default, we see here everything has been textured with the default textures. And while I'm here in visual mode, whenever I'm hovering over a sector, the corresponding sector parts get highlighted. The cool part is you can also edit in this mode, and I will show you how. So let's start out with maybe I want this room, the ceiling, to be a bit higher, at least here in the middle part. So I just hover over this part and use my mouse wheel and just scroll up. And suddenly we have here this missing texture warning, but suddenly we can get something that looks a bit more interesting. You see, of course, that the textures move as well. So there is, of course, some limitations with the Doom engine. But overall, this is probably the simplest way of editing your level architecture. First, you lay out just on a 2D top-down grid of how it should look like. And then you can start moving around in the level, and with the mouse wheel, you can select different or set different height levels. So when we test this game and run it, we will have level leaks here, which essentially means only the part that has been rendered before that exists will be in this place. It looks kind of trippy, but you know what? We can test it. Just for testing, we need to set one thing in the level, and this is where the player starts. For this, I go to the things mode. So again, mode and T like things. And as it is with the vertices, you place one with right click and move it or select it with a left click. So I right click here, and the first thing that the editor suggests me is player 1 start for all different difficulty settings. You can set the viewing angle. In our case, it would be looking straight up, and you hit OK. That's pretty much it. Now we can test our level if we want to. And for this, there is this test map icon. It's on the toolbar at the top, the rightmost one, and it starts, you see here, super fast. It launches here chocolate Doom, but when I move around, strange things happen here, especially when you look at the floor. What is going on here? This is exactly what I was talking about. We do not have a texture here. So I close this, Alt F4 and yes. And I hit Q for the visual mode, and let's take care here of the textures. So to select a texture here in this mode, you just right click a sector that you're on, and the first thing that says, the first thing that pops up here is this edit sector for floor and ceiling. So if I change now here the floor, I get this library here where I can look at, okay, base, brick or computer. Let's go here with base and select maybe this brownish. In this case, it's ceiling, but should we pick a floor? Essentially, if it's supported as either floor or ceiling, you can pick it. There is a distinction between floor textures and ceiling textures and wall textures in Doom. So wall and ceiling textures are not the same, but we will get to this in a bit. So I just select this one, double click it, hit OK, and you can see here now my floor is set. Now here for the side part, probably I also want a different or any texture at all there. Again, I just hover over it with my mouse pointer, right click, and there I get the line def. So again, the line def is in the top down view is the line connecting two vertices. So instead of having a top and a ceiling, it has an upper part, a middle part and a lower part. And in our case, the upper and lower part is not set, as is indicated here with the big warning sign. So just click and select here one of the wall textures. You notice here the wall textures are completely different from the floor textures. And with wall textures, we get some more leeway. I will show you how this works. So in our case, let's go with, I don't know, bronze 2. Double click. And also for the lower part, you can set here that use textures at top if you want to have the textures that you already used in the level, which is kind of handy actually. So I always click this, that in our case bronze 2 shows up here at the top. So, and we can see here, this is the ceiling part, this is the lower part, and it would be awfully nice if I could just copy this and apply it everywhere. And yes, you can. You just hover over it here in the view mode and hit Control C, like copy, and hover over where you want to place it and hit Control V. And there we have the ceiling. There's also a quicker way. If you have a mouse with a middle mouse button, you can just hover and middle mouse button pastes. And there's one thing even cooler is if you have, for example, like this loop here that all should be of the same texture, you can hold down Shift and middle mouse button, and suddenly all the undefined textures get filled with what I just selected. So the entire room here has now been textured, well, apart from this one here. So if we look at it again, so I hit always Q to exit out of the view mode, and then the play button here. And you see suddenly no more weird things there on the floor happening, and we can already run around in our level. Pretty neat, don't you think? So let's make this a bit more interesting. For example, I want to have here lava pits to the left and to the right, and maybe a window here looking out into some sort of courtyard where we can see the sky and maybe the outside. So let's exit out. I'm always hitting Alt F4 and then just hitting Y for yes and to exit. So if I'm here in the top-down view, it's not that easy to copy textures around. So this is why I always prefer to do it here in the 3D view. Why didn't you stick? Anyway, I just copy this, paste it here and paste it there as well. And we have here our walkway that is of a different texture. So let's make this one here lava. So I right click. And here for the floor, let's have a look at liquids. And there we have lava. The reason why I have lava 1, 2, 3, 4 here is because this is an animated texture. So it switches between those 4 frames. So I can use any frame that I want. So we have here lava. I copy it and paste it. Cool. So, but one thing that might be neat is lava should be some sort of a light source, right? So the cool thing about Doom is it supports some sort of lighting system. It's very rudimentary because the lighting is set per sector, but you can get pretty creative with that if you want. So in our case, let's make the lava really bright. So I hover over it, and while holding down Control and using the mouse wheel up, I can change here how bright it is in the engine. I do the same thing here, just mouse wheel up. And at the lower bottom there of the editor, there, right now it says nothing selected, but there it will print out what the current lighting level is between 0 and 255. So if you mouse wheel up and down and want to make sure that one sector has the same lighting as the other, just look at the very bottom in the editor here. It's hard that I cannot zoom in while I'm in the view mode, but if I do the same thing here for the height mode, it tells me to which height I changed the floor, for example. So, right, our lava is bright. Let's dim the rest of the room. So again, you see here the connected sectors. I cannot say this wall should be brighter than, for example, say that wall, because everything here is part of the same sector as it is highlighted. So I can make it a bit brighter, and here should be our door leading outwards. But first, let's make here this window into a courtyard. Also, maybe change here the texture, because it looks not as cool as it could, especially here the ceiling texture. So, and also notice this here. This is because here we have a little sector here at the bottom. So whenever you cut out or introduce a new sector, every sector also has a ceiling and sides. So if you don't like that, for example, here this thing protrudes, when you edit the ceiling height, you have to come back and make sure that all the ceiling heights are uniform in case you want this. So also, of course, here the lighting should probably match with the rest. So now it does. Right, ceiling texture, right click and select here a different ceiling. So it's right now by default, it's here in the hell selection or library. So I go for something that's a bit less hellish, maybe this gray thing here, or ceiling 5_2. Let's go with this one. It fits the brown theme of the rest. And again, Control C to copy, middle mouse button to paste, and we change the ceiling. Right, the same thing we want now here for the sides of the texture here on the sides. Right click, and in this case I only have a middle texture because the upper and the lower part is not visible because this is just a wall. So just click it, and let's go with this metal brown one here and hit OK. And I will just spread it here all over the level. So one thing that you probably want is when you're doing this light sources thing in the editor, maybe it becomes a bit too dark to discern. So this is why when you hit B, like brightness or bulb, you can turn on or off the lighting in the editor so that you actually see the textures that you're editing. And it also changes, it tells you here at the bottom of the screen that it changed the brightness. So one thing that I notice is I don't like the alignment of this texture. So wouldn't it be nice if this part here were flush actually with the floor? And yes, this is the case, and it's super simple to edit this. So again, I'm hovering over the section, the wall that I want the texture to edit, and just use my cursor keys, the arrow keys on the keyboard, left or right or up or down. And when I hit Shift, I move in bigger increments or decrements, and then can just move this texture. The cool thing also is, now that I specified here how I want the texture, if I hit A on the keyboard or Shift A, I can have all the other parts of the same wall be moved in tandem. So for example, if I move this up here and hold down Shift A, then vertically all the others here get aligned to this texture. So this again makes it super easy to have pleasing looking levels without the need to go individually for every single one. So for example, this part here, now it's flush with the rest of the texture, and let's make here this a bit bigger. And ta-da, the door is now integrated. Right, so maybe here the floor on top, the ceiling on top of the lava could also use something different. Let's give this here this floor 6. Yeah, that it looks a bit more threatening. Copy, middle mouse button, paste, and there we go. Cool. So before continuing, let's just test this real quick. And you see it's very dark here in the game. Only when you get closer, it lights up a little bit. And also here the ceiling texture above the lava pits is maybe a bit too intense. So maybe let's change this back to something that's not as severe. So this is why I'm always a big fan of testing, test early and test often. So B to switch on the brightness again, and I make the room here a bit brighter, like so. Also here. And change the ceiling texture again to something less noisy. Let's go here with Rock 03. This one here. And copy, middle mouse button, paste, and we're good. So, right, maybe the rest here of this little ledge would also benefit from having the same floor texture. Or didn't we have this a bit higher, like so? I think we did. So just copy, again, copy, middle mouse button, paste, and now it's uniform. So let's make here another room on the outside that we want to look through, or actually have a window that we can look through. So I switch back by hitting Q to my top-down view, and let's create a new room. We could, as we did before, just go with V into the vertices mode and right-click and then left-click and create here another room. Or I hit escape to cancel out of it. We can use one of the tools that we have in this beautiful editor, that is the draw rectangle mode, or Control Shift or D. And this is much easier, of course, if you just want to make a rectangular room. And again, I wanted to have here a window. Right now, there is no wall. This has no thickness, so to speak. So I switch to S into my sectors mode and right click and move it and say, okay, the wall should be this thick. For example, if you want to have thinner or thicker walls, right now everything snaps to the editor size. And the editor size is set here on the grid to 32 MP. Whatever this stands for. Sometimes when you want to make smaller objects, you can change it here to 16 or even 8 MP. But let's stick to 32 for now. And when we look in the editor, in the Viz mode, I can fly around, but those rooms here aren't connected with each other, to each other. So let's do this and then make this one here some sort of, like I said, a courtyard. So how do I connect these two rooms? Well, I just create mode and rectangle, and I just create a rectangle here where the window actually should be. And click again, and when I go to my editor now, you see here, suddenly those rooms are connected. To make this a window, we bring up here the floor of this part, maybe this high, and bring down the ceiling of this sector, and suddenly we can look through this. Let me copy and paste here the texture, and again I need to move the texture that it is flush here with the rest. One downside is, of course, you can see now I cannot move the upper and lower part of this texture individually. So if I want to have maybe this part here where I think that looks nice, I have, of course, to be content with whatever I get here on top. So instead, I just want to make this here conform. And suddenly, of course, this now is also a floor. So right click and maybe check out a different floor texture here for our window. Let's go with this one. This is also the one that's used for the ceiling. And here for the sides of my window. Yeah, let's go here with brown green. Copy, paste, and there we go. So let's make this the ledge a little bit smaller for now, because I want to show you something. So here, this is how it looks in the editor. Suddenly now we have this connection between these two sectors. So we can look through. Nice, but the problem is now we can also walk through. And maybe this is not something that you want. So let's make this, because it's a window, let's make it impassable for the player so they can just look into the next room and not step into it for now. Autosave complains that we haven't saved it, so this might be a good time. And I always save it into the directory where my chocolate doom is. that when I launch it with Chocolate Doom, it finds it right away. So I just save my map and put it here into Chocolate Doom, and let's just call it Tut Map. You can call it whatever you want. So to make the window impassable, we need to select here in the line definition mode. So I hit L, that we are here looking at individual lines. And if I zoom in, you can see here, those are lines highlighted in orange. So let's say I want to make this window impassable from both sides. So I click once and twice, and now I've selected the two lines. I right click, which brings up again here the line defs window. So we have different textures here, as it shows me, but what is important for us is we can set different flags for this line. In our case, it would be impassable, and we can say it even blocks monsters or block sound in case you need it. Or if you make secret levels or secrets that shouldn't be shown up on the automap, you can say here not shown on automap or initially shown on automap. So let's hit OK. And this should already be enough. So I hit C to cancel out of my selection. And this should be enough for us that we cannot step through this window anymore. See, I cannot move through here. So let's make this a courtyard with a sky box or just some sky above. And then continue making a door here that we can use, and maybe make the lava that we can, once we step into the lava, we actually take damage. So let's do this. So first, let's have a look at this courtyard. Like I said, it's supposed to be a courtyard, so I will make it here that it's a couple of levels lower. Maybe that's a bit too low. So when we look through here, we can see that there maybe is some ground and there is a wall, but beyond the wall, we should only see sky. So to do this, I select the ceiling now, and here as for the ceiling, here in my filter, I enter just sky. Make sure here in my library that all is selected, and there we have the F sky. When I hit this, it looks ugly and bad, but once it runs in the game, it will display the sky box. And let's say we want to have here this courtyard. Let's give this here a floor texture of, we have grass. Yes, grass too. And the walls, let's make them brick texture. Maybe this one. Bring down the sky a bit and have it flush with the level. So again, let's check it and see how this looks. So we look through this window. Well, I probably should step on the ledge first. I look through here and we can see here, okay, this is this little courtyard, but the skybox, I cannot see beyond what there is. But we know here from the editor, there is nothing there. It just displays here the ceiling as a skybox. So maybe we also need to have different textures there on the sides, but so far that is it. So again, copy, paste, paste, paste. So since this is supposed to be on the outside, let's make this brighter. Again, I hit Control and use the mouse wheel to brighten this up here slightly. And this will look rather convincing within the confines of Doom. Right, so the next thing is I want our players to be hurt here by the lava. So again, I make sure that I'm hovering over it and right click and bring up here this sector editor. And there we have effect and identification. Let's not look at the tag right now. It will come in handy in a bit. But for now, just look at special. So there are hard-coded values for certain sectors that have special things. If I bring up here the edit effect, you can see here we have 18 different effects there. And in our case, it would be damage -5 or 10% health. Or we can have even health and light blinks. But for us, I would say -5 or 10% health should be fine. So I hit OK and do the same thing there on the other lava pit. So -5 or 10% health, OK. And once we test this level, now stepping into the lava is bad. Right, so let's step here through this wall that should be a door into the next sector where we can shoot some imps. Let's say this is going to be the room on the other side. Let's make it a bit more symmetrical. Right now it has copied the last section that we had. So if we look through here, it looks like it's part here of this outside world, which it should not be. So I bring up the ceiling height to 0. How do I know it is 0? Either I can look up at the very lower corner, lower left corner in the editor. I'm not sure if you can read it here in this recording, but I can also right click and then have here the ceiling height and the floor height. And so this is why I set here the floor height. You can also set here the brightness, of course. But now I just set it to 0, that it is on the same level as the other side here. You know what? Let's make it a bit wider or longer. So I'm here in my line depth mode, which means I can just right click here on this line and move it outside, that I make it a bit bigger. So now I want to have a door here. Either I could say, okay, this recess that we have is already the door, or I can make some new sectors that should act as the door. And you know what? Let's make this. So again, I use the draw rectangle and use this here for my door, and draw another rectangle, or maybe I just bring on, oh, you know what? I make another rectangle. So the door is in between here, and this is part of the door. So both sectors are here. This one and the lower one are part of the door mechanism, so to speak. And then we step into this room. So again, I have L, selected the line, right click and drag, and now those sectors are connected. So when I look at it here in my editor, you can see, yes, they are indeed connected. There is a skybox. So maybe I do not want to have a skybox. So let's make this a bit bigger, that it's some sort of a hallway or a hall. And when I hover over here, you see here, I have now 3 little sectors. And I feel like for a door, they are a bit too wide. So I want them smaller. And this is what we use the grid for. So the 32 MP, let's switch it to, let's say 8 MP. And now I have a much more granular way of tweaking things. So in our case, I select this sector, the next sector, and the sector thereafter, and bring this in to make here the door slightly smaller. And just by right click and moving the sectors from top to bottom, I've changed now here the size of this door to be somewhat more manageable. But again, it's still 3 individual sectors here. So, and those things will add up. The cool thing is, as you can see here, I can change the lighting of these sectors. I can change even the ceiling and floor height, which is something that we will need to do. So let's, for now, bring the door halfway down and texture this. So here, for the sides of the door, I always like to use, to make doors very visible, I always like to use here lights at the sides. And here on the lights, I use light 5, hit OK, just copy this and paste it there on the other side. Maybe move it slightly around. It was wrong. Control C, of course, always works, or Z, not C. And here where the door actually is, let's have some sort of door tracks. And this is also something that exists when you go to doors, and there exists door track. Again, I can copy this and paste it here. So when the door moves down, have a look at what happens here with the door track. It moves with the door. So the texture of the door track, of course, should stay the same to give this impression of the sliding door. So to do this, I just, as always, hover over what I want to change. In this case here, the door track, right click and say lower unpegged, because it's the lower part of the door. And when I do this now, you see it doesn't move when I move the door. The same thing, of course, we need to do on the other side. Lower unpegged, or this is upper unpegged, lower unpegged, and this is fine. So we can give our door as well a ceiling texture, but it's more important that it has a side texture. Maybe we also want here to change the floor. to something else where the door meets the floor, like this threshold here. And as for the door side, let's right click. And as for the upper part, again here under doors, let's go with a good old brown Doom door. This should be fine. Okay. Now I'm going to copy it and paste it there on the other side. Yeah, maybe also this sector needs a texture. And if I change now the ceiling height of this door, you can see that it looks like a door. But of course, we do not want to change the ceiling height ourselves like so, but instead have the player, when they are interact with this line, because that's what it is, a wall is a line in Doom. So that when they interact with this line and hit the use button, then the door moves up. How do we do this? Well, the first thing is we need to close the door because this is the state we want it in. So I can scroll it down here with the mouse wheel or just right click and say, okay, the ceiling height is the floor height, and thus the door is closed. Cool. Looks good also on both sides. So as for sides, there is now one little gotcha that you need to be aware of, and you can see it here in the only in the top-down view. I will zoom in now, and when you look here at the different lines of the floor of the door, you see here those little pegs that all point downwards. Those are the normals in which direction this line is facing. So essentially, this means when I interact with the door, that is this big gray, dark gray thing here in the middle, when I interact with the door from this side, which means it's good because we're looking straight on at the face of this texture. But if we step through and it closes and we want to interact with it from the other side, it doesn't work anymore because you see here this little nub also looks into this room here and not outwards. So this gave me some issues the first time because doors wouldn't work, and this was the reason for it. So to change the facing, I just, in line depth mode, so I hit L, and in line depth mode, I hover over it, and if I hit F, I change the facing direction. And this is how we want it outwards. Right, so let's make this a door. I'm here in line depth mode, so L for line depth mode, and click once and twice, and now both sides, the inner and the outer side of my door, are selected. So I hit right click, and now here I can select an action. And again, if I open here the edit action, we have some predefined actions. When you open up here these actions, they all have weird names and numbers like DR, W1, S1, and if you look down here, there is this little legend. So S pertains to a switch, W to walk over, G is something that reacts to gunfire, or D is a door. R means it's repeatable, and 1 of course means it's once only. So what we want is a door that is repeatable, because we want to open it and close it. And this is really the first thing that was implemented. This is why it has here the integer 1, dr door, open, wait, close, but also monsters can interact with doors, which is kind of cool. I hit OK, and then here action number 1 is selected for these two lines. I clear my selection, save, and that is it. So let's try this out. I move up here and interact with the door, and it slides open, and again I'm here in this other part of the courtroom, and the door automatically closes, and I can interact with it also from this side, exactly how I want it to be. Step into the lava, take damage, and look outside. Right, so let's make this not an outside world, at least the other room in which we stepped into, this new one here. So let's close it up here on top by changing the ceiling from the sky texture. Yeah, let's go with a rock ceiling here. And as for the floor, let's make this the good old Doom floor. To me, this kind of hexagonal pattern is the standard when it comes to Doom. Also, now let's change here the walls as well. Let's go with something. Yeah, these brown pipes or cement. Cement could look good, but it might be a bit too busy. So let's change it to something else. Let's go here with brown 96. This I've used before. So copy, paste, 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 paste. And now what I want to do is maybe we start here out on a little pedestal and have stairs leading downwards. And the room is all dark. And there is a switch. And we can switch on the light in the room. And once we do this, of course, the monsters probably will see us. And then we have our first fight. So to do this, let's make these little stairs leading downwards. So again, I switch to the draw rectangle mode. And the granularity of my grid might be a bit too fine. So I switch it to 16. And let's start here. So this is where we enter this room. And then we have like a couple of steps leading down. And I do this, as you can see, just drawing rectangles there. And this makes them to individual sectors. So now we are here. And if I change the floor height, also do this here for the individual sectors. Suddenly we have something akin to stairs. Maybe that's a bit too much, but you get the picture. Suddenly it looks like something. Again, because these individual sectors, let's bring it down one more, like so. Since those are individual sectors, they all have an individual ceiling, so we can start the player here with something that looks a bit more, I don't know, architecturally designed. Maybe something like this. I noticed that it looks not imposing enough. So I switch here to the vertices mode, left click to drag here my selection, and right click to make here this entrance situation a little bit wider or longer. And when I look at it, yeah, that's better. So let's take care, of course, of the missing lower parts. Just select here the brown texture again, copy, and again, hold down Shift, middle click. Right, I said I wanted to make this a bit more interesting by providing a switch that the player can interact with. So first, maybe have here something different for the ceiling. So I switch my ceiling texture here to lights, and let's use here L tile 6. As for the lights, those ceiling and floor textures I cannot move by using the arrow keys. Because, as I said before, they are different than other things in this engine. They are handled differently than wall textures. So they always have 64 by 64 pixels and they're always grid aligned. So this is, at least in Vanilla Doom, something that you cannot change. You have to lay out your level that it looks good with how it is set out. So in my case, if no, that's wrong. Copy, paste. If I do it like this, it looks a bit better here. Or maybe even have this one here as well. That it looks like, yeah, this is intentional. Copy, paste. So as for the sides, again, I want to have some upper side texture. Let's go also with brown 96. Sure, why not? And see if we can find a part that looks somewhat pleasing. And to save myself from having it to align on all three sides, I just hover this one and hit A and Shift A. And now all the connected wall textures have been shifted accordingly. It also pertains here, of course, to the room, which may be something that I do not want. So I could do it like so, but actually, you know what? It's fine. It's fine. So let's change here the brightness of this room. Let's turn it all the way down. Well, not all the way, but pretty much to, let's say, 80. And also here for the steps leading outward, they just keep getting darker. And suddenly, just with the small features, little rudimentary features that Doom has, suddenly we have here something that looks kinda like a light source. Of course, other Doom ports even manage to have some sort of dynamic light sources, which is pretty cool. What they hacked into the engine, but for us, this should suffice. So I change here maybe the floor texture. It's a bit too busy, So I change it back to this brown thing here. And now I want to have a switch that maybe sits here that I can switch on, and then suddenly the room is brightly lit. But before that, let's place some enemies, right? Let's place a upgrade and some enemies. So to do this, those are all things in the engine. So for this, we need to go to the things mode by hitting T. And now either insert on the keyboard or just right click and you can add a thing. In our case, maybe have some enemies there, monster. And down here you see a little preview of what it actually looks like in case you don't know. And let's say with a former human, those are, or let's go with an imp because they throw fireballs. Again, I select with left click and deselect with left click or move around with right click. So I just have it here with right click. I have hover over it, Control C to copy and Control V to paste wherever my mouse pointer is right now. And they're all facing away from us now. This is what this little arrow here indicates. So let's test our level as it is right now. We can walk through here and suddenly there is darkness. And if we shoot, suddenly the imps here will be alerted. So maybe it's a bit too dark what we see. And you can see here also the imps can interact with the doors. Cool. So let's make this a bit brighter then. It was maybe a bit too dark. Make here this little switch panel. By now you probably know how we do this. I make a new sector. In this case, again, I draw a rectangle and I make this very, very thin. So I switch over here the granularity to 8 MP and have here this little panel. It's 32 by 8. So I have here a sector, and if I hover over it, you can see now I can just use my mouse and extrude here this sector. Again, it is a sector or a room like everything else, just used differently. So of course we want to texture it. So for now I give it a switch texture. You can find them here under, of course, switches. And which one would fit? Probably this one here. Okay. And using, again, the keyboard key, I try to figure out where the switch is. There it is. There it is. And I move it that it looks good. So I copy and paste it here on all sides. Paste and make sure that it looks somewhat pleasing. So maybe this is even a bit too high. So I bring it down by 1. And so here we have a switch that we can theoretically interact with, but right now it is just a texture. This is not really a switch. And in Doom, you can make everything a switch. Every line can be a switch by giving it an action. So for our case, this is our little panel. And again, let's see. I see another problem. See here the lines that I said. Again, the line here is facing inwards. So by hitting F, 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 now everything is facing outwards. So, but still, it's not interactable. We want to make, we want to switch on the switch, and that should change the light here of this sector. So, how do we do this? This is where tags come into play. So I right-click the switch, and you can see here an action and then tag, an identification. Right now it has here tag 0. And tags are nothing but groups that react together. In our case is we make a new tag. So this is the first unused tag is 1 because we do not have any other tags. And we want to have an action with this tag. So the action would be an S action because this should be a switch and not something that you walk over. And here under light, we have here SR, so this means repeatable, and the light change to 255. So I hit OK. So this is action 138. The problem is now nothing is connected to this switch now. So we said, okay, this has tag number 1, but nothing else has tag number 1. What we want is to have everything in this room to be affected by this switch. So I switch over to the sectors mode by hitting S, and I'm just selecting all these things here, all the sectors in this room and right click, and there I can say, okay, they all have the tag 1. And now you can see here that when I hover over it, there is a line that indicates that yes, this line is connected to this sector. And that is all that you need for this kind of thing. So there we have our switch. We can barely see the imps there. Let's switch it on. Bam. And behind us, the door has closed. So the next thing might be we want to give players something that is more enjoyable to fight these imps with, which would be probably a shotgun. Placing monsters and items is much simpler than adding geometry. So I go here again, T for the things mode, right click, and in this case, let's go with weapons. And there we say super shotgun, sure. Let's center it here. And that's all it takes. There is our super shotgun. Switch on the lights. And that's it for the imps. Right. Oh, one thing that I also want to show you, that is maybe you like this room so much that you want to use it again, or in another level, or even in the same level. For example, maybe you've made a very cool, I don't know, little prop made of sectors and everything that you want to reuse again. You can, of course, copy and paste it, but a better way of doing things is to save it as a prefab, as a prefabricated thing. To do this, let's say we want to reuse here this starting room again. For this, I just select everything. I'm here in my sectors mode and just select all the sectors, even the door in this case. And then I can go here up to prefabs and say create from selection. Then you get prompted where you want to save it. In my case, I save it here in my Doom folder and I just call it room tutorial, and C to clear my selection. And if I go up here to prefabs again and say insert prefab from file or control P, I can select a prefab, which now again with the right mouse key I can move around. What is also helpful sometimes is maybe we want to make here this a very symmetrical map. There is a possibility to just flip it horizontally or vertically, and you do this here at the very right. There is this little toolbar where you can say, hey, I want to change the scale maybe of it, or do a rotation, or just flip it. So we can, for example, say 90 degrees rotated, and then we could put it on here. And since I've already imported it before, all I need to do is hit P, and this brings it up again. So this is the last prefab that we've imported. And let's say I want to flip it vertically. Ta-da, it's flipped vertically. So if I place it now here, and where it connects to this room, let's have a look here in the editor, and suddenly we have it here connected. Of course now we cannot get into it because we do not have here these stairs as we have in this room, but theoretically there is another player starting point, and apparently I forgot to have here this textured, copy, paste. Did I forget it here as well? Yes, I did. Yeah, this is how you can reuse your assets. Right, so let's make a staircase connection from this sector down to this sector. And again, we can do this either manually by creating rectangles, and another rectangle, and maybe rotate it that it has this curved appearance. Or instead, we can say we want to use a bridge tool. For that, first we need to have some sort of sectors that can act as the start and ending sector. Again, a sector is just a rectangular part of the map. It doesn't have to be doors, but can be. So for this, I create here a door that, let's make this 96. It's just here a sector that I have a sector, and the same thing here. So again, it looks like this. Maybe I can bring down here the ceiling, should I want to, from my starting point. And then we come out here in the end, in the lower floor. Maybe here, I do not want to have a skybox here, but some sort of, yeah, actual ceiling. Let's go with ceiling 1, just that we have something there. So to connect these kind of two sectors together, I want them here slightly at an angle. And to do this, you can use the bridge connector mode that looks like this here. It's called, yeah, bridge mode or Control B. And for this to work, you need to select the line depths from where you want to start. Again, I make sure here that the line actually is facing outwards again. Always make sure that this is the case. Like so. Yeah, this line here cannot face outwards at this moment because there is nothing on the other side. So this is why it's not working here at the edges. But here, this one should face outwards. So now I select this line and I select that line. And then I hit Control B or click the icon. This one here to go into the bridge mode. And you can already see what it is doing and what is happening. You can select how you want to align the floor. Maybe a linear interpolation or an ease in or ease in and ease out with a sine shape. And you can even specify how many subdivisions you want. So the brightness is a linear interpolation between them, and as same thing here for the ceiling, we want an ease in or ease out interpretation. And suddenly we have here this corridor that is here, this very narrow staircase that leads from one part to the next part. And again, it might be in this case not the most pretty thing, but it is much easier to do this here with this bridge builder tool than to do it manually. One other thing, of course, is now this corridor is also affected by our panel here that we have. So if we want to get rid of this in my sectors mode, I select all sectors that I want to clear, right click and just set the tag from 1 back to 0. And when I do this, the connection is broken and only here these parts are affected by this brightness change. Of course, no one is stopping me here in the vertex mode to pull these individual vertices out and change them however I want to make it maybe a bit wider or less wide or whatever I want. And of course I can select multiple vertices and make it even a bit like this was hewn into the rock and stone. Maybe then I would change here the side texture as well. But overall, this is how to mod the vanilla Doom and Doom 2. And essentially, everything that needs to be connected, the most important thing is it needs to have tags. So when you, for example, when you want a player to step over a certain line, a sector line, you can have the sector line fire a certain action. For example, here it's the walk over, where you can say, okay, when the player walks over this line, you teleport them somewhere else, or teleport the monsters. Or if you want to finish a level, well, then it can be a switch when the player that the player needs to hit. Then we go to the next level. Or W, it means if the player walks over this, the level ends. Then, of course, there are other things like crushers, where the ceiling comes down, and so on and so forth. So, yeah, just get creative, and there are lots of tutorials, I think, out there. But basically, that is how you do it. One more thing is, of course, I showed you the cumbersome way of making these stairs here. Let me quickly show you, to top things off, how we could have done this much simpler. Let's go here and create an ellipse. And select this ellipse and I bring it slightly up here. So this is maybe some sort of elevated pedestal for, I don't know, a power up or something. Here in my top view, I make sure that I'm here in the sectors mode, select the sector that I want to have stairs flowing out. And here I have my mode, and in the mode is the stair sector builder mode. And there I can say the number of sectors that I want and the depth of each sector and on what side, inwards or outwards, I want them. So let's say 3 steps and have the depth at 16. And we can change here even the floor height and the ceiling height. And with that, I already have here my sectors that I can bring up or down as easy as I wanted, and maybe just even work with the sector height that I could set. So this would have been the much easier way. With these kinds of sector divisions, you can also get creative when it comes to faking light sources. For example, let's say here, this is a super bright corridor and you want to fake that the light is spilling out of this corridor into this courtyard, where it is very dark. You can do this by painting, essentially, in the vertices mode, like this little wedge of light that maybe spills out from here. And in the sectors mode, I just delete this sector that I do not need. And now I can just use this one, hover over it and make it brighter. Copy, of course, here the texture. Do the same thing here. And suddenly it looks like there is light shining out here from a light source that is here in this corridor. Again, you can get very creative with this. There is a lot to do that you can get done even in basic vanilla Doom. If you want to use your own textures, you need an additional program. In our case, this was SLADE. So we've talked about WODs before, and when you save your level, it is also saved as a WOD. WOD is the default data format for Doom. Again, it stands for where is all the data, and essentially it just describes what kind of data is inside this package and what kind of data it is and where it belongs to. So I'm going to save my map as tutmap, let's call it tutmap 02, and I can use again this WOD. I can open it up here in SLADE. One thing that is very important is to set a base resource. In our case, since we're working with Doom 2, the base resource is a Doom 2. You can set this resource by hitting the little gear icon. So let's add an archive. Here from Chocolate Doom, I just add Doom 1 or 2, just so that we have it as a base archive. The reason for this is sometimes it's a bit peculiar what certain assets are needed in your custom WODs, but I will show you what you need to know. So I select here my base resource is a Doom 2. You know what? Let's have a look first at the Doom 2 WOD. So this again is where is all the data. This is all the data that is in the original Doom. And you see here, it's a very, very long list. There is everything in there. The maps, the sound effects, even the text. The first thing is here the palette, because the 256 colors are possible in DOS. And this is the palette that the entire game uses. There's even the ending screen, different demos, all the maps and where the vertices and things go on these maps. And of course, when you scroll down further, let's go here, we have sound effects. Screens, ending screens in this case, for certain things in the game, like here the sprites for all the weapons, all the enemies, and so on and so forth. This is how things are laid out in the WOD, and this is how you can add your own things or change existing things. You know what, maybe let's change this floor tile here. So if we wanted to export it, well, first we need to get it out of the WOD, then change it in our editor of choice and get it into our own WOD. So for this, let's export a floor and then a wall texture, because like I said, those are different things. So with the floor here, with the graphic selected that I want to export, I just go to right-click, graphic, and export as a PNG. And let's say this is the wall that we want to change. Again, right-click, graphic, export as PNG. You can also use your own graphics. Again, this is just something if you want to modify existing graphics. So for me, I usually do my editing here in Photoshop. So let's bring both of these things up, and they are tiny. Like I said, the floor always has to be 64 by 64 pixels. So if you look at this, you cannot change this. It won't work. So make sure that it's 64 by 64 pixels. And here in Photoshop, it's indexed to 256 colors that I can be able to change it. I need to first convert it to RGB color. Because I want to show you how this palette thing works and how things might change in terms of look, I pick here a very strong red color and use a very soft brush, and also maybe change it here from red, have something here that is pink or purple, like here. Maybe some ugly, to make it really ugly, maybe this bit of orange here, and save this. Again, it's just for testing purposes. Let's call this floor new. In the end, you want to limit yourself to 8 characters for the file names. Well, for the file names, it's not that important, but when SLADE asks you what the file name should be, you can only use 8 text characters. So, and here for our wall can be bigger. Right now here it's at 64 by 64 pixels again. Let's double it and let's go to 128. So we scaled this up. Let's make something with a very soft brush. Here a cute little smiley face in orange. So again, I save this as a new file. Of course, you can get creative and crazy how much you want. So how do we bring this into our own map? So I will close now here the official Doom 2 WAD, and instead I open our level that we just created, and we called it here tutmap02, which is also a WAD file, albeit you see here 19 kilobytes. It's much smaller than all the textures and images that are here in the original Doom 2 WAD. It is much smaller than the Doom 2 default WAD. So if you look at it, the first thing we see here is the preview of the map that we created. And then there are just definitions for the lines, the sides, the vertices, the sectors, and any existing things that were placed. But there is no information yet for graphics. So let's import what we have, but first we need to prepare here this WAD file. Again, it's an archive, and that the Doom engine knows where it should look for patches or sprites or flats, as they're called, for the floor textures. It needs to be in a certain range, and to tell the engine at what range where to look for it, we need to set markers in this WAD file. You do this here inside the WAD. You just create here this new entry, and then it make sure that it says here empty marker, and you say p underscore start to reference the start of a range. And then we create the same thing. We call it p underscore end. And between these parts here, between p start and p end, this is where our custom patches, our textures should go. So once we've created this, I say here import files. In our case, it's just one file. It is this W3352. One thing of advice is please name your files before you import them correctly as how you want them to show up in the editor at the end. In my case is I change here the name now to px wall, because I prefix all my custom textures with px for pixel prophecy, that I can easily look for them. The reason for this is when it's awfully hard to change names, because then the references in the WAD files will be all wonky and you need to look in certain places. So be sure that your file name is something that you will recognize and you remember, and B, the file name is shorter than 8 characters before the extension, because we're still talking about a game engine that was from good old DOS days. So make sure 8 characters at the max. So now our graphic here has been imported, but now it's here below start and end. So we need to move it up. You can do this here with these arrows so that it now sits here between start and end. The green and the star means this has not been saved yet. So if we look here at our graphic now, this is still a PNG. This is not something that the Doom engine can work with. It needs to be indexed to the color palette of the Doom engine, and also the format needs to change. Because again, internally, this is still just the data of the PNG that has been added to this WAD file. We need to convert it. To do this, there is this Convert To button, but you can also right-click, Graphic, and Convert To. It's the same thing. You can also do this for multiple files. You don't have to go one by one. So let's do this. And the important thing is here that it says Convert To Doom GFX Paletted. This is what we want. Then what is important is here it says Existing Global to Existing Global. What is Existing Global? Well, if we go all the way up here, this is why we set the base resource to doom2.wad and the palette to doom. So this means whatever we convert to, this will always be the correct one. And also the texture references will reference the right files. So this looks good. We do not need transparency for this one. I hit convert and save. It says here save changes to this entry. Yes, please. So now this is now, it says not graphic PNG, but it says graphic Doom. So right now you would think this is enough, but sadly it is not, because the Doom engine does not know that those are textures or patches that we can use. And for that we need to add it to a patch table and a texture table. You only need to create a texture and a patch table once, but you have to add each texture that you add manually. There also is here this texture editor on top, but I will first show you how to do it manually. So here for our PX wall, I right click, and under graphic, I have here at the very bottom two options that says add to patch table and add to texture X. So if I click add to patch table, it brings up this no texture definitions found warning. And yes, we want to create or import a texture definition list because it does not exist. It looks like this, where it asks us, okay, in what format do we want it to be? And when I say import from base resource archive, it means it takes all the texture names of the existing textures from Doom to WAD and only add our texture at the end. This is necessary because how the Doom engine works. Again, you only need to do this once, that you have here this table of texture and P names that is now part of your WAD. But of course, now that it is there, I save it and right click on the graphic and also add it here now to the texture X table. And again, save it. So now we have patches and textures. So if I am here in the patch table and scroll all the way down, at the very bottom it says here PX wall. This is the definition of our new texture or our new patch. So I save this now, and now everything in terms of wall textures is set up how we want it to be, and I can open our map again in the Ultimate Doom Builder. So for this, I just reopen what we have, and you can already see here, when we saved it, it was 19 kilobytes, but now with all the graphics in it, it's 61 kilobytes. When you open it, it just says what our base resources are and everything, just hit OK, and it should look exactly the same. Sometimes there are problems when you forget something like to add it to the texture table, and the first thing I always do is to test the map, because if it won't launch and I get an error message, this means there was something wrong with the WAD file. In our case, everything worked, which means we can use our texture. So let's, didn't texture this. Let's move it up. No. Anyway, so let's say this wall here should have our new texture. How do I do this? Like I do it with all the other textures, right click and here in the middle. And so now you can see here, the Doom WAD has 427 textures, and our TUT map has references to 428 textures. This means all the references to existing textures are there. This is why we imported the base resources, but there also is at the very end our new texture. This is why I said it's important to give it a name that you can find, because now I just filter for PX, and there is our wall texture. So again, make sure that it's actually in the WAD, because you won't find it here in Doom, but you find it here in your tut WAD or under all, of course. So hit OK, and there we go. That's all there is. Save, and let's test it out. And here we have our little smiley face. Bam. This was for wall textures. I will add now a different wall texture. So let's undo this now and make a frowny with, let's say, this purple, because purple is a color that is not very common with Doom. So this will look very, very bad when it's being indexed into the palette. So I will save this again as px wall 2. So again, just real quick, how to do this with your second, third, and fourth graphic. Again, we're here in SLADE. I just say import files and pick in this case the wall 2 file, which is now here at the end. I move it between p start and p end, then convert the graphic from PNG to Doom. Convert to Doom GFX paletted, and you can see there's now a stark difference because Doom doesn't have as many shades of pink as we would need. We don't need transparency, convert. Then I right click, graphic, add to patch table, and right click, graphic, add to texture X. I save everything, save, and now it reads here graphic Doom, and nothing here is green or blue anymore, which means I can open it again in our map editor. And the first thing again is to run it to see if there are any errors. No, there are no errors. Our smiley still exists as we had it before. And let's change here texture right next to it. And again, I'm using here my filter PX to get here to this wall. And this is how you make your custom wall textures. Now, finally, I said it's something somewhat different there for the floor textures. And I will quickly show you how to do this. Let us save this map here and save it as tut03. And let's get back to SLADE and open tut03. So to add now floors to it, we also need to add a range. As I said, it starts here with P and P start and P end. I've come to understand there is a difference sometimes between starting with PP or P start and PP end or P end. I don't fully grasp why this is an issue, but the same thing I think applies to the flats, the floor textures. So in our case, I add here a new entry, which I call FF start, and add another one, which I just call F, just one F underscore end, so that it looks like this, FF start and F end. And between those two markers, I will save it now, we should import our floor texture. So I save this now, just to make sure that it is indeed correct. Let me jump over to the Ultimate Doom Builder and reopen here tutmap03. And hopefully it should run without any issues. Yes, runs without issues. So apparently this somewhat was correct so far. Right, so again, FF start, F end, those are our markers. And I will import now our floor. In this case, this ugly party pit here. So it's sorted at the very end. Again, we need to have this between FF start and FF end, and we need to convert it. And when I convert it now, we do not convert it to Doom GFX, but instead to Doom flat. It's still the same ugly palletized version of this, but it's a different format. So again, Doom flat, not Doom GFX. So I save this now. And now it has here exactly 4 kilobytes and is of type flat. And I save this now, and hopefully this should have been it. So I reopen now here version 3, and it has again now 82 kilobytes. And let's start it here and see if there are any issues. No. Okay, so this works. Now let's see if we can change here our floor to this super disco version of it. So S to change to sectors mode, right click, and here for the floor, what did I call it? Floor new. And there it shows up. So for floor, you do not need to add it to the textures or the patch table. It's just important that it is between FF start and F end. I hit OK. And now I have here my custom floor texture in the game as well as our custom wall textures. And I think they heard us. It's that easy. Well, not quite easy, and this little tutorial is somewhat exploded in its runtime, but hopefully it is helpful to you if you want to mod the original Doom. And the last thing that I want to show you is how to load your own custom map now with Doom. So I said we have everything here in our chocolate Doom folder. So this is chocolate Doom. Then there is the Doom 2 WAD, that's the base WAD, so to speak. And there are our tut map, our all tut maps here with the backups and the autosaves and whatnot. So for us, it's important that we just know the file name that is here, tutmap03.wad. And if we want to run this now with chocolate Doom, I create here a new link, can be anywhere. And here in the properties, as the target, I just say file, so dash, or not dash, it's just minus, and file, and then say here tutmap03. And with that, this one should load as the starting map. And here we are, and we can play it how we want. Also, by the way, it works pretty similar in the original DOS Doom. All it needs to be is in the same folder as the rest of Doom, and then you just say launch it with the command minus file and the file name. And you're good, and I hope you can enjoy your own custom Doom levels. And there is so much more to mod with Doom. Again, this is just the vanilla version of Doom that we've been looking at. But overall, I'm certain you will get the hang of it, and I'm losing my voice already. So thank you for watching, and hope this was helpful. Bye-bye.